Hi, friends, and welcome to Cosplay in Color, a YouTube show dedicated to showcasing amazing costumers of color and those that support them.
I'm Gigi, cultural history buff, dabblist, and historical costumer.
I'm Noelle, and I do both historical and cosplay, sometimes at the same time.
Today we are interviewing Claire. Welcome to the show, Claire.
Thank you.
We're so excited to meet you and have you on our show. I've been following you forever. Your work is so beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
First, some house rules, though. The first rule of Costuming in Color is that you tell everyone about Costuming in Color.
That's right. This way, even if you don't have any costumers of color in your local group, you can get to know some in our global community.
Awesome. The second rule is that kindness matters. And aside from that, there are no rules. So let's get into it. Claire, where are you from and do you still live there?
So I am from Shanghai, China. I moved to US 4 years ago, and I currently live in Brooklyn, but I am actually moving back home in less than a month.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. I really want to talk to you about that. I've actually spent a month in Shanghai. I love Shanghai.
Really?
Yeah.
When did you go?
I want to say it was 2012 or so. I had a friend who was working there, he ran his team in Shanghai and he went to go live there, and so his wife went over there too, and then I was like, hey, do you got a guest bed? And they were like, yes we do. So I went and hung out because if you have a friend in Shanghai, you should go to Shanghai. So we actually we took weekend trips to Beijing and Xi'an. I've also been to Hong Kong and Taiwan. I've spent a lot of time in China. I really like China.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to many of the places you went to, probably.
Shanghai is really awesome, though. Shanghai is definitely on the top. I love Shanghai. It's an awesome town. It's like New York City and Las Vegas had a baby. It's crazy.
That's a very good way of describing it.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a great place. You can do anything at any time of day. I've been I want a massage at 3:00 in the morning, and you can get that.
Yeah, it's a great place to live at.
Yeah.
So since you'll be back in China in less than a month, you can tell us what you like about Shanghai as well. But my question for you is, what do you like about where you live right now?
Well, with New York City, I think the thing I like the most about it is just, even when you're walking on the street, you see all kinds of people that are just expressing themselves through the way they're dressing, walking, or talking. And it's just this sense of freedom of being yourself and living the way you want it that just really intrigues me. Nice. And really, I think it shaped me into who I am today, because I came here for college, which is, the most important years of your life, arguably. Yeah, and then also there are so many museums and good exhibits around New York just all the time. So you just constantly get these inspirations. And that's the same with Shanghai too. It's just you always have something going on in the city that you should go see and check out.
Awesome.
What is your Instagram handle and why did you choose it?
My Instagram handle is Claire Zhang YX, because I suck at choosing names, so I usually just go with my own name. So Claire is the English name I picked for myself. And Zhang is my last name. YX is the acronym of my actual name, which is Yixuan.
Oh.
Yeah. And my profile name used to be Claire Zhang, but I think I changed it over the pandemic into Claire Yixuan Zhang. I think that's just kind of my little bit of resistance against this whole anti-Asian racism.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of Asian costumers, and just Asian folks that I know, change their handle back to their Asian names, which I'm in support of.
I think it's a really cool thing to do.
Absolutely.
What is the costuming scene like in New York in general, and whatever borough you live in New York?
I think I only started doing historical costuming over the pandemic, so I never really had a chance to connect with most of the people doing the same thing in New York City. So I know there are a lot of people and events happening in the city, and I do follow people like Danny Wellington and Angela Clayton and Jeff, but most of the time I kind of just appreciate them from far away on the internet, but I never really reached out because I am just an introvert. I think the only person I actually hung out with was just Jeff.
Jeff's awesome.
Yeah,
We
we like
both
Jeff.
love Jeff.
I know his stuff is just so cool.
He's a cool dude. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I did get to go to Pearl River and get that discount food
That's
once
awesome.
or twice.
That's
So
awesome.
Very nice.
the advantage of being friends with Jeff. And there are also quite a few Chinese costumers or vintage lovers in New York City, and I became quite close to them over the past few years, which is great.
Are you going to continue doing costuming in China when you go back?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. I am packing up things right now. I have 4 boxes and 2 suitcases at the moment, and half of them are just costumes I made and costume supplies and fabrics that I don't want to throw away.
That's great.
Good.
Do you know what the
Yeah,
costuming scene is like there?
Yeah, there is a growing community of historical costumers in Shanghai too. And the community has people from all sorts of backgrounds. So you get like vintage Chinese clothing collectors, you get vintage lovers who just dress like those 1930s posters every day. And then there are tailors and dressmakers who professionally recreate these clothing and these silhouettes from the period. So it's a really great community back home, and I'm dying to meet with everyone who I've only talked to online in the past 2 years.
That's awesome. If I come to Shanghai, can I visit you and hang out with those people too?
Yes,
It sounds like fun.
definitely. You guys should both come.
Yeah.
That would
Hey,
be
Gigi, you
great.
want to go to China?
Yes, I do.
Shanghai's like a great place to go.
Yes.
Cosplay, historical, or both?
Historical. I've only done historical my entire life. I don't know why I never got into cosplay. Probably because I guess I just feel like no matter what I do, I won't look as good as the character I'm cosplaying.
Oh,
So I just never did that.
Oh, I hate that answer though. Like, you should still embrace the love.
I know, but I'm just really crazy about. I mean, I am a perfectionist,
I get
I
it.
never want to share works that I don't think are perfect. And I think just with cosplay, I will never make something that do the character justice, especially with like animes and stuff.
Got you.
Yeah, I can understand.
I understand that. I'm kind of a perfectionist too. So, since you do historical, tell us what time period and place is your favorite?
In terms of Chinese clothing, my favorite would be the Republican era, so roughly from the 1910s to the 1930s. That's kind of the era for the classic qipao or qiangzhen cut. And then for Western fashion, I think I'm really interested in pretty much everything from the 18th century to the 1950s. I would say the only period I don't particularly like is the Empire style period.
Okay.
I know many people love that period.
Yeah, your feelings are valid.
Absolutely. I'm here for your bustle dresses, obviously. Like that one in the Met. I'll just not. That was the most beautiful thing. Like
that was my favorite.
That's one where you just gasp. You just like, she did it. Like, that's amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
And the fact that you describe yourself as someone who started recently, you know, in the pandemic, like that's kind of inspiring to know that, you know, if you really work hard and you focus on something, that you can create beautiful things even when you're a beginner. Tell us how you got your start during the pandemic.
Yeah, so I took a class called Cut and Drape, I think that's the name. Anyway, I'll do this part again. I took a class on cutting and draping, elementary cutting and draping, my junior year, and the idea was to make a mock-up of a dress of your choice, and I chose to do a robe à la française, which is definitely not what you're supposed to be choosing if you're entering an elementary draping class. And I think that was probably the third item I've ever draped on my own. So that was a whole journey. But since the pandemic happened, I was doing 3 shows and 2 movies at that time. I go to school for costume design, so that was all I was doing. But all of those were canceled, and I suddenly had all of this time in the world, and I was stuck in my apartment in Brooklyn all by myself. So I was like, might as well just make the whole dress. And so the day before my school shut down, I went to the costume shop. I took 3 rolls of fabric. I took a dress form. I took pretty much all I could take in one cab ride. And that's how I just started with historical clothing.
That's amazing. My second costume that I ever made was a robe française, so I completely understand. It's like you don't understand what it is really, and so you're like, you have that like bravery of lack of knowledge that just lets you go for it, and then you do
exactly.
it and you're like, I did it.
Yeah. In the middle of it, you will probably be like, why did I do this to myself? I am never gonna make it. But then you just keep doing it one little bit at a time, and then in the end you look back and kind of like, that's pretty amazing what I just did.
Mostly I was like, what is all this fabric? There's a lot of fabric in that gown.
Yeah.
Okay. What keeps you in the community?
Definitely the talent and passion of the people in the community. As you guys probably know, I am obsessed with creating the right silhouette and all those small details. And I think I'm very just technique oriented. So I'm just always interested in seeing other people's design and craftsmanship. And I think that's what inspires me to hone my skills and keep making things and just bringing the work to a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And I also really like that people always help each other within the community. So like whenever you have a question and you ask it in the Facebook group or the group chat or Instagram story, there are always people who are trying to help you out, and nobody's keeping anything from other people. And I think it's this really supportive environment that makes me want to stay in the community.
Awesome. What would you like to see improve in the costuming community?
I think as someone whose first language is not English, I would love to see more non-European costuming being incorporated in the community, and also more non-English speaking costumers being incorporated in the community. And I know it's really hard because language barrier is a thing and you don't have subtitles when you're on Instagram, but I just feel like there are so many talented Chinese historical clothing lovers who haven't really gotten any exposure as Western historical costumers have gotten. And I'm sure that there are other people in other culture that are as talented and deserve more attention. So I think that's something that I would like to see improve in this community. And I mean, I feel like people around me are starting to watch things like Squid Game, and they're getting into this whole thing with watching shows with subtitles in languages that they completely do not understand. So I think there is hope, one day.
What is your favorite completed project?
Definitely the 1870s bustle gown. I just really loved how it came together with the background, which was New York Public Library.
Yeah.
The outside of New York Public Library, it was closed during the pandemic, so I couldn't go in, which was sad. But it was a happy accident that the color of the dress completely matches the color of the building. So I'm very happy with that whole photo shoot.
Have you considered doing another one in there and like going inside now that it's open?
I don't really have time.
Yeah.
I really wish I could, but I'm leaving in 8 days.
Oh wow, that's really soon. There are like badass places you could wear that in China though.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been giving some thoughts in what I'm gonna do after I go back home. And I think a really interesting thing would be to like wear a very Western style garment in like a traditional Chinese scenery, or vice versa, wear something Chinese in a Western background, playing with this culture exchange.
That's awesome.
I can't wait to see what you do when you get back.
Yeah.
You will see it on my Instagram.
Got a VPN?
Not yet. That reminds me, I have to do it.
Sometimes stuff works in Shanghai though, that like it's kind of weird, like the farther away from Beijing you get, the more stuff works sometimes. Like, yeah, when I was there, I was able to access like YouTube and a couple other things that I didn't think I was gonna be able to access without a VPN.
Interesting. Yeah. I never got to go on YouTube in Shanghai, but I will give it another try.
Maybe it was the like carrier I chose. Like I just bought one of those cards in the airport that, because I was only there for a month.
Oh, so maybe that's what's happening. I know in the really southern part, like in Guangzhou or Shenzhen, that's basically one like water away from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
That part actually, some places in that area are not covered by that whole VPN and Chinese government thing. So you can actually go on to all the Western media without using the VPN.
Yeah. It was really weird because I remember I could use YouTube maybe, but I couldn't access Google. And I was like, okay, like they're the same company.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like, okay, sure, China.
Maybe because Google was blocked later than YouTube. So whatever was blocking it was more advanced. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
What is the silliest thing that's ever happened during one of your events or photo shoots?
I think wearing the robot à française in Times Square with a mask, sunglasses, and an empty bubble tea cup in my giant pannier pocket was in itself pretty silly.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I think that day there was a guy who he saw me and he was sitting somewhere else and he just ran in front of me and did a curtsy, like a full curtsy, and went away. I thought that was pretty funny.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. And my friend who shot that video reminded me of it a couple of days ago. And I was like, I can't believe I don't remember this.
Do you have a sentimental or nostalgic costuming memory to share?
I think it's just when my friend and I went to the Jazz Age lawn party earlier this year in August, I believe. There were quite a lot of people there, all dressed up in, the 20s or Gatsby style. And we were the only ones wearing non-Western 1920s clothing. I was wearing the Chinese outfit that I made, and she was wearing all antique garments. And people took genuine interest in it, and some even came up to us and asked about the outfit and the history behind it and all those. So I just felt good, very good that day, and it felt like we accomplished something without really, trying to accomplish something.
That's awesome. That's very cool. What is your entertainment routine for when you're sewing or crafting?
I just watch a lot of Netflix shows and documentaries and random movies. But I don't know about you guys. I can only watch things when I'm doing the most tedious and repetitive tasks, like hemming
yeah,
a 5-yard hem, things like that. But I can't have anything running in the background if I'm draping.
yeah, for sure. No, if it's something that I have to like figure out for the first time or a new thing or whatever, like no, quiet.
Yeah, it's like I can't even have music on because music distracts me. I tend to want to sing along.
Yeah, totally.
I have questions about draping, but I'm not going to ask them right now. Who inspires you?
Honestly, just everyone in this community. Like I said before, I always like seeing how other people realize their design and how they construct their outfits. So it's just always inspiring to see everyone's process because it's always a little bit different with everyone. And so the more you see, the more interesting technique and niche things you get introduced to. And I'm also inspired by just artists and craftsmen in general who are not necessarily in the costume world. I feel like I've always had this idea of combining historical clothing with modern art. One thing I really want to do is to make like a robe à la française, but in the style of Yayoi Kusama or some of those modern Japanese designers. Haven't really figured out how exactly I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it.
So I feel like, sorry. I feel like there's like the Japanese, do you know Aiko? Oh, she's a costumer for TV. What's her last name?
Oh, is she the one who did the...
She did like the Cell and the Fall and her name is Eiko Isioka.
Oh, Eko Ishioka.
Like,
yeah, I know her.
That might help you with Francais stuff because there's something that she did. I have another book of her stuff that there's a gown that looks like Francais but Japanese.
I will look her up. Interesting.
Also Guopei. Do you know Guopei?
I have very mixed feelings about Guopei.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't really like her. Let's just say.
I have mixed feelings about her as a person and some of her stuff, but some of her stuff is like the technique is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think some of her technique is quite amazing, but my biggest problem with her, and honestly a lot of the haute couture Chinese designers, are that they are doing exactly the same thing as the white designers who appropriate the Chinese culture. It's kind of just internalized cultural appropriation.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm here for some technique usually. Like I like the how did you do that, but like not necessarily what you did.
Yeah. And also she doesn't really give as much how do you say? Like she never really promotes the craftsmen, the people who actually did those things and the people who actually know those techniques. She just hires them and makes it look like she did everything. But that's with a lot of fashion houses.
Yeah, for sure. It's every fashion house really.
Yeah.
Also like glass blowers like have this problem too. Like that guy Chihuly that's super famous. He doesn't have depth of field. He lost an eyeball. He's not making any of that stuff. Like any of it. He's not even really designing it anymore. So I get you.
It's just the name, I guess.
Yeah. Gigi, you were asking about draping though.
No. I'll go to YouTube. I'll figure it out.
Do you have commentary on draping, Claire? Like
it just set me off on a tangent in my mind. Like you have to get this because we've had conversations before about draping and I've never followed up and actually looked at it. So if you have any YouTube videos you'd recommend, I'd be happy to get your recommendations, Claire.
I'm actually curious, how do you make the costumes if you don't do draping? Do you do flat patterns?
There are tons and tons of commercial patterns, but like this thing that I'm making here is will be a chemise dress, like a chemise all around. But like the front of it is a pattern and the back of it I draped because I wanted a pleated back. But
so for my period, for 14th and 15th century, what I've seen people do that do know how to sew, that have sewn for me, is they either already have a pattern made for the shape and they get your measurements and they adjust their pattern, right? Because you can't buy a pattern for some of these. Well, I guess you could, but they're not very good.
Not good.
yes.
But for my, especially like late 15th and early 16th century Italian Renaissance style dresses, you do a mock-up. You get muslin, you sew it together in like a shirt form, you put it on, and then you draw where you want the neckline to be, and you cut that out, and then you take the pieces apart, and then that is your pattern, right?
You kind of do that with all patterns though. Even when you have a pattern, you make a mock-up to do your adjustments on and do that same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought a pattern kept you from having. Okay, well,
Even when you're draping, it's like you can never get it right the first time. You always have to go back and change things, and quite annoying.
so
You can
mock-ups
also
is
combine patterns and draping like that is.
Yeah. I think with most of the things I made so far, it's a combination of draping and just looking at original patterns. Yeah. With the Chinese one, it's completely flat patterned. There was no drape at all. But
What's the name of that shirt that you wore to that picnic?
It's called a so there are two names. Most commonly it's called 岛大袖, which literally means upside down wide sleeves.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah. So it's called that because of its sleeve. That kind of sleeve is very typical 1920s. You don't see it in any other period. But that kind of jacket or blouse, in general, is called 大金山.
大金山.
Yeah. So any blouse that closes on the side is called a 大金山.
Oh, okay.
Those patterns for those you can find on Etsy. There's like a whole bunch of sellers that are Chinese people who live in America or wherever else that they can sell from Etsy from, and they put patterns up for that style of shirt a lot.
I wouldn't trust most of those patterns. It's kind of like simplicity patterns from medieval dress.
Yes, sure, but like if you want to get a starting pattern that you can adjust to be what you want, like that's where you can get one for super cheap because you can just download it.
I'll give it a look. I actually never looked up patterns for Chinese clothing because they are just they're made in such a different way. And the most experienced tailors, they never use a pattern. It's just you draw directly on the fabric. Yeah,
this is for Western sewers who want to make up a thing at home. So yeah.
Or just, elementary sewers.
Yeah.
From anywhere in the world who do not know what they're doing.
Yeah. It's definitely not going to be like couture, but
yeah.
Making
those patterns are hard. It's all like math involved.
Who or what are you grateful for?
Definitely my parents, because they have always been supporting me, even though they probably still don't fully understand what I'm doing. And I think especially with Asian parents, they are definitely not the stereotypical Asian parents who just want you to be a doctor. And I'm just very grateful that they supported me in whatever career I choose. And I'm also extremely grateful for all of my roommates, past and current, for not kicking me out of the apartment because my sewing machine just gets so loud and I use it so often.
I mean, you're creating art, right? So like, yeah.
There are quieter ways of creating art.
There are.
I get the Singer Heavy Duty, and I think it's one of the loudest machines out there on the market.
Yeah, but like, think about this. You could be a drummer.
Fair. Very fair. Yeah. You just made me a lot less guilty in one sentence.
Yay. Ping me anytime you need me to do that for you.
I will.
If you could give new customers one piece of advice, what would it be?
Just if you want to make something, just make it. We kind of talked about this a little bit already. When you are facing a new project, especially as a beginner, it's always kind of daunting to have the dress. It's always kind of daunting to just have like a photo of the thing you want to make in front of you and probably a pattern from 200 years ago that you completely do not understand how to use. And it's just always easy to just look at those things and just back off and be like, I can't do this. But you're going to make a lot of mistakes as you're doing this, but you're also going to learn so much. And no matter how you started or what your skill sets was when you started, and no matter how much time it's going to take for you to make this one thing, you're going to end up with something that you're proud of, and you're going to learn so much from the process, and you're going to feel less scared to getting to your next project, because once you get through the first few projects, you kind of get this feeling of how to do things the proper way, or the way that you are most comfortable with. So yeah, just do it.
Just do the thing.
Just do the thing. There really is no more advice I can give than just do the thing and not be scared.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a closing message on inclusion or equity, please share that with us now.
I think it's just be respectful and don't be afraid of asking questions, because a lot of the people around me, they stay away from other cultures because they're scared of offending others, which is a totally valid reason, and you should be mindful of offending others. But to me, inclusion means that you're not just staying in your comfort zone, but you're actually trying to understand things that are not familiar to you, and you're trying to kind of just get into another culture and learn about their customs and how their dresses are made, and the tradition and just the history of that culture. And so I think if you're really curious about the non-Western clothing someone's wearing, or if you want to make something that's either inspired by or from another non-Western culture, I think it's the best thing to do is just to reach out to those people and ask questions, and ask them if what you're doing is appropriate, or what's the best way of doing it, or ask them if they have any resources that they could share with you. And I'm sure people would want to share their thoughts and knowledge with you if you're being genuine, respectful. And I think that's how we expand the community and incorporate more into it.
Yeah, well said.
Kind of my closing message.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining us today, Claire. It was lovely to get to know you a little bit today. And thank you for watching this, to everyone who's out there viewing this video right now. We will leave a list of Claire's information down below for you to go follow her on all of her platforms.
Please do give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and if you have a costume of color that you think we should interview, use the form that we put in the description box below to tell us about them. Make sure to leave a little love for Claire down in the comments, and stay safe out there. See you next time.
What did we learn? This one? Hearts?
Oh yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.